Good morning, class. We can recall that last week we had chapter 4, part 1, Tradition of Origin of Nigerian People, where we look at the definition of traditions of origin of migration. We looked at the categories of migration. We looked at the values of the categories of migration and the significance. Today, we are now going to look at the migration of origin of specific Nigerian societies. We shall start our discussion with the Hausa community, the origin of the Hausa people. Now, we say that the Hausa are seemingly the largest ethnic group in Nigeria. The traditions of origin of the Hausa and the state they founded, which are so far available, are purely legends derived from oral tradition. In one of the popular traditions, the Hausa were said to have originated from the marriage of one Baijida and a certain queen of Daura. Baijida was a prince who fled Baghdad and sought refuge in Bonu. He married the daughter of the mayor. However, owing to the treachery of his father-in-law, who deprived him of his followers, Baijida fled westwards and his wife. He left his wife at a town called Biram Tagaba to bear a son while he continued on his journey, mounted on the back of a beast. So, at Gaya, he got the blacksmith to make him a sword, with which he later killed a sacred snake called Saki in the town of Daura. This snake had all along prevented the townspeople from drawing water from their well on all days except Friday. In appreciation of Baijida's service to her people, and perhaps in admiration of his valor, the queen of Daura consented to marry him. Through the marriage, Baijida became the king and undisputed leader of the Daura people. Let us now look at the children of Baijida. The tradition had it that Baijida and his queen produced a son called Bawo, who in turn begot 7 sons, namely Biram, Daura, Kano, Rano, Kastina, Zaria, and Gobi. It was also said that Baijida had another set of 7 children from a Wari slave woman. These illegitimate children founded the 7 bastard Hausa states, Bansa Bakwao, namely Zamfara, Kebbi, Gwari, Yaro, Nupe, Ilore, and Kwararafa. Today, the bulk of Hausa-speaking people live in Bauchi, Kaduna, Kano, and Sokoto states. Much Hausa is even spoken in some cities outside these states. Example, Jos, Ilore, and others. We now look at the major flaw or defect of this story or tradition of origin. The major flaw of this tradition of origin of Hausa people is that it does not actually deal with the origin of Hausa state or explain state formation in Hausa land. The Bajida legend has been seen as of doubtful historical significance for the following reasons. Number 1, the legend is in conflict with some tradition found in Gobi, which denies any kingship relationship with Bawo. 2, the original geographical location of the state of Gobi will appear to be further to the north around Asban. It was not until the late 15th century that the state of Gobi was compelled by the Tuaregs to move southwards and come into closer contact with other members of Hausa Bukwai. In the Bajida legend, there is a conception to the effect that before the migration associated with state formation, Daura was already in existence. Hence, the mention of a Quem Dauranama, who was ruling the city before the arrival of Baijida. Having seen the flaws associated with the tradition of origin of Hausa people, we are now going to look at the traditions of origin of the Yoruba people. The Yoruba can be described as one of the major ethnic groups in southern Nigeria. Several members of the Yoruba race can be found everywhere around the globe, but the majority of them are found in some western and central states of Nigeria, stretching across Ekiti, Ogun, Ondo, Lagos, Osun, and Oyo, Kwara, and Kogi states. The language is also being spoken outside Nigeria. Some tribes in Benue Republic, Ghana, and Togo speak Yoruba language. They practice both Islam and Christianity, but most of them are still traditionalists to the core. The Yoruba ethnic group is believed to have come into existence between 2000 to 1000 before Christ. Within Nigeria, the Yoruba dominates the western part of the country. Yoruba mythology holds that all Yoruba people descended from a hero called Odua or Oduduwa. Till date, the history of the origins of the Yoruba people remains controversial. The Yoruba as an ethnic group still hold many versions about its origin. The people have two main traditions of origin. The first tradition speaks of the migration of a people from the east into the present-day Ile-Ife. This migrating team was said to have been led by Oduduwa, who had sons who founded neighboring Yoruba towns and kingdoms. The second tradition speaks of the creation of the whole world in Ile-Ife by a divine order under the leadership of Obatala. However, Obatala was said to have lapsed in his role, and the responsibility of founding Ife and other Yoruba towns therefore shifted into the hands of Oduduwa and 15 others. We now look at the Reverend Samuel Johnson's version of the Yoruba migration history. In his book, The History of the Yoruba, Johnson traces the origin of the Yoruba to the east. According to him, the Yoruba originally came from the northeastern area of Africa. The similarities between the cultures of the Yoruba and the Egyptians in terms of religious observances, works of art, burial, and other traditional practices are enough evidence. It is from Egypt, after several years of journey, that the Yoruba finally settled in Ile-Ife in Nigeria. Oduduwa is believed to be the first leader that led the Yoruba to Ile-Ife and subsequently sent his sons and grandsons to found other Yoruba kingdoms. Johnson's conclusion is worth revealing here. Look at what Reverend Johnson said, that the Yoruba came originally from the east. There cannot be the slightest doubt as their habits, manner, and customs all go to prove. With them, the east is Mecca, and Mecca is the east. Having strong affinities with the east, looming so largely in their imagination, everything that comes from the east with them comes from Mecca, and hence it is natural to present themselves as having hailed originally from the city. The Okeronfo's version of the Yoruba migration. Okeronfo is located in Ile-Ife. It is believed to be the center from which the world was created. In their paper, Yoruba up to 1800, Professor Kijogbi and Professor Ayedele gave us a full picture of what Okeronfo's version is all about. According to the legend, there was a period when the world was covered by water. The Almighty God then decided to send some of his messengers to the world, and they included Obatala or Orisanla or Orisa Alasa as the leader. and 16 oyes, that is immortals. They were given 5 pieces of iron, a lump of earth tied to a white piece of cloth, and a cockerel. Somewhere on their way to the world, the leader Obatala got drunk with palm wine. Oduduwa seized the symbol of authority from him and eventually led the party to the world. The site on which they landed is traditionally known as Oke Ramfo in Ile-Ife. On arrival at the site, Oduduwa set down the 5 pieces of iron and placed the lump on earth on them. Consequently, the earth was formed and Oduduwa thus became the ruler. It was from this base, Ife, that he extended his authorities to other Yoruba towns and villages. Professor Falola had argued that even though these two traditions of origin appear to tell different stories, they nonetheless agree on 2 things. First, that Ife was founded and led by Oduduwa. Second, that the Yoruba as a people antedated the Oduduwa period. In attempting to reconcile both traditions, it has been argued that the traditions of Oduduwa need not necessarily be interpreted to mean the origin of a people, but perhaps the demise of one epoch in the history of the Yoruba people, possibly Obatala period, and the commencement of another, the Oduduwa period. Having said that, we say bye-bye to the traditions of origin of the Yoruba people. We now come to the traditions of origin of the Igbo. And we say that the Igbo inhabit the entire Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, and Imo states. Igbo-speaking people are also found in Delta and Rivers states. The origin of the Igbo people has been a matter of serious speculation among historians and other scholars who are interested in Igbo studies. It is a very difficult job trying to historicize the origin of the Igbo. Accounts of these origins range from the ridiculous to the absurd. Part of the explanation for this is the absence of indigenous documentary evidence left behind by the ancestors of the people. Furthermore, Igbo land did not have empires and kingdoms of the magnitude of Benin, Kano, or Bunu. Thus, there were no official record of the affairs of any Igbo community by themselves because the people did not have well-established institutions and court officials and other methods for preserving their past. Therefore, what serves as sources of Igbo origin are speculations and extrapolations by indigenous researchers and European scholars and colonial officials. Many of these claims are anchored on cultural evidences of similarities between the Igbo and non-Igbo people. The hypothesis on the origin of the Igbo. Professor Ijoma identified 4 hypotheses of the Igbo origins, namely the Oriental hypothesis, the Niger-Benue hypothesis, the Benin-Igala hypothesis, and the Igbo homeland or independent origin hypothesis. We now explain all the hypotheses, starting with the number 1, the Oriental hypothesis of the Igbo people. The Oriental hypothesis holds that the Igbo are of Middle East origins. In other words, the belief is that they were not directly created by God, rather are relatives of another group and had to, over the years, evolve their own separate identity. They are believed to have originated from either Egypt or Israel and are said to have moved to their present location from there. This hypothesis is based on some real and perceived cultural similarities between the Igbo and the ancient Egyptians and the Jews. This includes circumcision, system and manner of naming children, sentence structure, and similarity in some words. Others are religious and cultural symbols, and love for adventure and enterprise. The major exponents, that is, we are now in point two, the Niger-Benue hypothesis. We say that the major exponent of the Niger-Benue hypothesis is the late Professor Afibo. The hypothesis sees the Igbo as a specialized group of cultures and people that did not descend directly from God's factory for making human beings, but who developed from a pre-existing ancient pool of cultures and peoples. Therefore, in line with this position, the Igbo as a member of the Negro race did not originate from anywhere outside Africa. This is because members of this racial group are known to have originated somewhere south of the latitude of Asela and Khartoum in the present-day Sudan. Linguistically, members of the Negro race speak languages which fall into the Niger, into the Niger-Congo language family. We now look at the third hypothesis, which traces the origin of the Igbo to two non-Igbo areas, namely the Benin and the Igala. The Benin claims are popular among the Igbo communities along the banks of the river Niger, as well as the Ndoki, Enugwezike, and Ohafia communities. The most detailed of these claims of the Igbo origin from neighboring non-Igbo areas is that of Ezeshima. According to this tradition, this is very popular in places like Onitsha, the Igbo communities in the West Niger area, which originated either from Benin or Ida or both. In other words, the claim of Igbo origins from these two pre-colonial empires exists side by side, especially among the riverine Igbo communities. We now look at the Igbo homeland hypothesis, and this hypothesis argues that the Igbo originated from within Igbo land. Historians have been inclined to locating the primary areas of Igbo origin and settlement to the Nri-Oka or Lu-Owere houses. It was from this Igbo heartland area that many Igbo groups migrated to where they now live. Some of these groups were later to migrate to the western Niger Igbo areas, and others moved southwards to the areas around the Cross River. Many of them have been domiciled in their present locations for a long time, such that they appear to have lost memories of having migrated from elsewhere. One evidence that is in favor of the Igbo homeland hypothesis is that of early settlement and protracted utilization of the land and soil of the Nri-Oka and Olu-Owere heartland areas. Also, the people's oral traditions, idioms, and proverbs give credence to the antiquity of the Igbo heartland areas. The people simply do not have any history of having migrated from elsewhere to their present location. We will end our lecture for this week. Next week, we shall look at chapter 5, the early external influences, the European and Arab contacts with the Nigerian people. Next week, we shall concentrate on chapter 5. Thank you so much.